I found the fake violation notice stuffed in my mailbox on a Tuesday morning in March, printed on what looked like official HOA letterhead, threatening me with a $5,000 fine for an imaginary fence violation that didn't exist. My name is Marcus Chen, and I had been living in the Sunrise Valley community in Henderson, Nevada, just outside Las Vegas, for 3 years without a single problem. I worked as a software engineer from home, kept my yard immaculate, and generally minded my own business. The house was a beautiful 3-bedroom ranch-style property that I had purchased as an investment, planning to sell it within 5 years when the market peaked. Everything had been going according to plan until Patricia Hendricks became the HOA president 6 months ago. Patricia was the textbook definition of a Karen. She was 47 years old with that specific haircut, the asymmetrical bob that seemed to be a requirement for her personality type. She drove a white Lexus SUV, always wore athleisure wear despite never actually exercising, and had made it her personal mission to control every single aspect of our neighborhood since taking over the HOA board. I had watched her berate a landscaper for 10 minutes because his truck was parked 3 inches over the red curb line. I had seen her measure a neighbor's grass with a ruler to prove it exceeded the maximum allowed height, but I never thought she would target me. The letter in my hand claimed that I had installed a fence that violated community guidelines. The problem was, I didn't have a fence. I had never installed a fence. My backyard was completely open, backing up to a common area with a small playground. I read the letter 3 times, my coffee growing cold in my other hand as I stood in my driveway. Violation notice. Final warning, the header screamed in bold red letters. Homeowner Marcus Chen of 4782 Meadowbrook Lane has failed to comply with previous notices regarding the unauthorized fence installation on the property. The fence exceeds the maximum allowed height of 4 feet and was installed without prior architectural committee approval. Failure to remove the fence within 10 days will result in a fine of $5,000, followed by daily fines of $100 until the violation is corrected. Additionally, a lien may be placed on the property. I walked around my entire property, phone in hand, taking photographs of every angle, no fence, not even a decorative border. Just my well-maintained lawn, some desert landscaping with native plants and the open common area beyond. This had to be a mistake. I pulled out my phone and called the HOA management company. The woman who answered sounded bored. Sunrise Valley HOA, this is Jennifer speaking. Hi, this is Marcus Chen at 4782 Meadowbrook Lane. I just received a violation notice about a fence that doesn't exist. I need to speak with someone about this immediately. Let me pull up your file, I heard keyboard clicking. Oh yes, Mr. Chen. We have 3 notices on file for your property, the fence violation and 2 others for landscaping issues. My stomach dropped. 3 notices. I've only received this 1 letter, and it's about a fence I don't have. What landscaping issues? According to our records, you have weeds exceeding 3 inches in your front yard rock garden, and your mailbox is the wrong shade of beige. It's supposed to be desert sand, but yours is tan canyon according to the inspection report. I looked at my mailbox, which was the exact same color as every other mailbox on the street because they were all installed by the builder. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is insane. I don't have a fence, I don't have weeds, and my mailbox is identical to everyone else's. I'm just reading what's in the system, Mr. Chen. If you want to dispute the violations, you need to submit a written appeal to the Architectural Committee. They meet once a month. The next meeting is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The letter says I have 10 days before they fine me $5,000. That's correct. You should have responded to the first 2 notices. This is your 3rd and final warning. I never received any first or second notices. My voice was rising, and I forced myself to take a breath. Can I speak with Patricia Hendricks? Mrs. Hendricks is very busy. You can email her through the HOA portal, but I can't guarantee when she'll respond. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I hung up without answering. This was clearly a mistake, but it was a mistake that could cost me thousands of dollars if I didn't handle it correctly. I immediately went inside and composed a detailed email to Patricia Hendricks, attaching photographs of my property from every angle, clearly showing the absence of any fence. I documented the date and time, copied the management company, and sent it with a read receipt request. Patricia responded within an hour, which surprised me. Her email was curt. Mr. Chen, our inspector has documented the violations on 3 separate occasions. The photographic evidence is in our files. Your appeal will be heard at the next board meeting on April 15th. Until then, the violations stand and the fine schedule will proceed as outlined. I called my real estate agent, Tom Rodriguez, who had sold me the house. He had been in the Henderson area for 20 years and knew everything about every HOA in the region. Marcus, hey, good to hear from you. How's the house treating you? Not great, Tom. I've got an HOA problem. I explained the situation, reading him the violation letter word for word. Tom was silent for a moment. Marcus, this is weird, like really weird. Patricia Hendricks has a reputation, sure, but fabricating violations is next level. Are you absolutely certain there's no fence? Tom, I'm standing in my backyard right now. There is no fence. Okay, here's what you need to do. Document everything. Photos, videos, timestamps. Get a surveyor out there if you can to do an official property report showing no fence exists. And most importantly, check your property value and any recent appraisals. If someone is creating fake violations, there might be a reason. What kind of reason? I've seen this happen once before, in a different community. A board member wanted to buy a specific property at a reduced price, so they tanked the owner's property value with violations and fines until the owner got desperate and sold cheap. It's fraud, but it's hard to prove. My blood ran cold. You think Patricia is trying to force me to sell? I don't know, but you should check if anyone has been inquiring about your property or if there have been any offers you don't know about. Also, request copies of all violation notices from the HOA. If they claim they sent you 2 previous notices, those should exist somewhere. Check if they were sent certified mail. I spent the rest of the day making calls. First, I hired a property surveyor who could come out the next morning. Then I requested my complete HOA file from the management company, specifically asking for copies of all notices and the method by which they were delivered. Finally, I set up cameras around my property, front and back, with timestamp capabilities. If someone was going to claim I had violations, I was going to have ironclad proof of my property's actual condition. The surveyor arrived at 8 the next morning, a friendly guy named Robert who had been surveying properties in Henderson for 15 years. He spent 2 hours measuring, photographing, and documenting every aspect of my property line and structures. Mr. Chen, I can tell you right now, there's no fence on this property. Not even remnants of an old fence or post holes. Your property line is clearly defined, and everything is within the easement requirements. I'll have the full report to you by tomorrow, but you've got nothing to worry about from a structural standpoint. Can you put in the report that there is definitively no fence and never has been? Absolutely. I'll include photos with measurements showing clear sight lines across your entire property boundary. That afternoon, I received a response from the management company. They were sending me digital copies of my file, but it would take 3 to 5 business days to compile. That seemed excessive for what should have been a simple file pull, but I didn't have much choice. I confirmed the request in writing and waited. 2 days later, on Friday, I got another letter in my mailbox. This one claimed I had an unauthorized shed in my backyard that exceeded size limitations and was painted an unapproved color. I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't have a shed. I had a small storage box for pool supplies, the kind you buy at Home Depot, that was maybe 3 feet by 2 feet. It wasn't a structure, it was patio furniture. I photographed the storage box from every angle, measured it, and documented it. Then I noticed something. The letterhead on this new violation notice was slightly different from the first one. The font was a different size, and the logo was positioned slightly off-center. I pulled out the first letter and compared them side by side. They were definitely different, though someone would have to look carefully to notice. I scanned both letters in high resolution and started examining them on my computer. The more I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. The first letter had a footer with a phone number that was 1 digit different from the number on the HOA website. The second letter had the correct phone number but listed the management company's address incorrectly, putting the suite number as 240 instead of 204. Something was very wrong here. I called Tom again. I think these letters are fake. The letterhead is inconsistent and there are errors in the contact information. Marcus, if someone is sending you fake HOA letters, that's mail fraud. That's a federal crime. You need to contact the postal inspector. The postal inspector, is that a real thing? Very real. Mail fraud is serious business. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service handles it. If Patricia or anyone else is sending you fraudulent letters through the mail to harass you or damage your property value, they're committing a federal crime. Go to the post office and ask to file a report. I drove to the main Henderson post office on Monday morning. The clerk at the front desk looked confused when I asked to speak with a postal inspector, but she made a call, and 15 minutes later, a woman in business casual attire emerged from a back office. Mr. Chen, I'm Inspector Lisa Morales with the Postal Inspection Service. I understand you want to report possible mail fraud. We sat in a small conference room and I laid out everything. The fake violation letters, the inconsistencies in the letterhead, the violations for things that didn't exist, and Tom's theory about someone trying to tank my property value. Inspector Morales took notes and examined the letters carefully. Mr. Chen, do you have any evidence that these letters didn't come from the actual HOA? Not definitive proof yet, but I've requested my complete file from the HOA management company. If these letters are real, they should have copies and records of sending them. The letters claim to be second and third notices, but I never received any first notices. They also reference fines and violations that are completely fabricated. And you've documented the actual state of your property. I showed her the surveyor's report, my photographs, and videos. Inspector Morales nodded slowly. This is enough for me to open a preliminary investigation. Mail fraud is a federal offense, and if someone is using the Postal Service to send fraudulent documents intended to cause financial harm, that's exactly what we investigate. I'm going to need you to keep every piece of mail you receive from the HOA or anyone claiming to represent them. Don't throw anything away, don't mark on them, just put them in a folder and keep them safe. If you receive any more suspicious letters, I want you to call me immediately. She handed me her card. I felt a surge of relief that someone was taking this seriously. Over the next week, I received 3 more letters. One claimed my house number was improperly displayed. Another said my driveway had oil stains that violated community standards. And the third stated that I had wind chimes that exceeded the noise ordinance. None of these things were true. My house number was standard and clearly visible, my driveway was spotless, and I didn't own any wind chimes. I photographed everything, documented everything, and delivered copies of all the letters to Inspector Morales. With each letter, the inconsistencies became more obvious. Different fonts, slightly different logo placements, and small errors in addresses and phone numbers. Whoever was creating these was good but not perfect. The HOA management company finally sent me my complete file. I opened it eagerly, expecting to find copies of all these violation letters. Instead, my file contained exactly 3 documents: my original homeowner information form from when I purchased the property, a receipt for HOA dues from 2 years ago, and a single violation notice from 8 months ago about leaving my trash cans out past pickup time, which I had immediately corrected. There were no fence violations, no shed violations, no mailbox color violations. Nothing. According to the official HOA records, I was a homeowner in good standing with no current or pending violations. I immediately scanned the entire file and emailed it to Inspector Morales, along with a detailed explanation. Her response came within 2 hours. This is very helpful. Please attend the HOA board meeting on April 15th, as planned, and do not let anyone know you've contacted my office. I'll be conducting interviews with the HOA board members and management company this week. The wait until the board meeting felt eternal. I kept my property in perfect condition, documented everything with my security cameras, and collected 2 more fake violation letters from my mailbox. One claimed I was operating a business from my home without approval, which was technically true since I worked remotely, but it wasn't against any HOA rules. The other stated that I had painted my front door an unauthorized color. My front door was the original builder color, the same deep burgundy as half the houses in the neighborhood. I started digging into Patricia Hendricks. A little social media research revealed that she had recently posted about her dream of buying a property in our neighborhood to expand her home-based candle business. She needed a house with specific features: a large backyard opening to the common area for events, a corner lot for extra parking, and a floor plan that could accommodate a studio workspace. My house matched that description perfectly. I was on a corner lot, my backyard open to the common area, and I had a finished bonus room that would be ideal for a workspace. I checked property records and found that Patricia lived 4 streets over in a smaller house on a standard lot. I called Tom and told him what I had found. "Tom, I think Patricia wants my house. She's been posting on social media about looking for a property, and mine fits exactly what she's looking for. Have you gotten any purchase offers? Anything through your realtor or directly?" "No, nothing. But with all these fake violations stacking up, my property value has to be tanking. If someone runs a title search, they'll see all these supposed liens and violations." "Actually, Marcus, that's a good point. Request a title search on your property. If someone has been filing false liens or violation records with the county, that's another crime. That's fraudulent encumbrance of property." I ordered a title search that same day. The results came back in 48 hours and my suspicions were confirmed. 3 liens had been filed against my property in the past 6 weeks, totaling $18,000 in alleged unpaid HOA fines and violation penalties. The liens were filed by Sunrise Valley HOA, but when I compared the filing signatures to publicly available HOA documents, they didn't match the management company's authorized signers. I sent everything to Inspector Morales. Her response was immediate. "Mr. Chen, do not, under any circumstances, pay any of these fines or acknowledge any of these violations as legitimate. I'm escalating this investigation. We'll also be bringing in the Clark County District Attorney's Office for the fraudulent lien filings. This has gone beyond simple mail fraud." The day of the April 15th board meeting arrived. I prepared a presentation with all my documentation. photographs, surveyor reports, property videos, and a side-by-side comparison of the fake violation letters with genuine HOA correspondence. I dressed professionally and arrived at the community center 30 minutes early. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of chairs for homeowners. About 20 people were scattered throughout the room, most looking bored and checking their phones. Patricia Hendricks sat in the center of the board table, flanked by 4 other board members I recognized from the neighborhood. Patricia started the meeting with standard announcements about landscaping schedules and pool maintenance. Then she got to the appeals portion of the agenda. We have one appeal tonight from Marcus Chen regarding multiple property violations. Mr. Chen, you have 5 minutes to present your case. I stood and walked to the front with my folder of documents and my laptop. Thank you, Mrs. Hendricks. I'm here tonight because I've been receiving violation notices for problems that don't exist on my property. I've been told I have an unauthorized fence, but as you can see from these photographs and this professional surveyor's report, there is no fence on my property and never has been. I displayed the photos on my laptop screen. Patricia's expression didn't change. I've also received notices about an unauthorized shed, improper mailbox color, house number display issues, and several other alleged violations. None of these things are accurate. More concerning, when I requested my official HOA file from the management company, none of these violations appear in my records. According to the management company, I'm a homeowner in good standing. A murmur went through the other board members. One of them, a man named Dennis who lived 2 streets over, leaned forward. Patricia, what's he talking about? Why would violations not be in his file? Patricia's face flushed. Mr. Chen is obviously confused. Our inspector has documented these violations multiple times. Just because the management company hasn't updated their records doesn't mean the violations don't exist. Who is your inspector? I asked calmly. I'd like to meet with them and understand what they think they saw. That's confidential information. Actually, Mrs. Hendricks, according to HOA bylaws, homeowners have the right to confront evidence against them. I have the right to know who is inspecting my property and on what authority. Another board member, a woman named Susan, pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Patricia, I'm looking at our inspection records and I don't see any recent reports for 4782 Meadowbrook Lane. When were these inspections conducted? Patricia shuffled papers. I have the reports here somewhere. This is really not the time to question internal procedures. Mr. Chen has violations, and he needs to correct them. I pulled out the fake violation letters and held them up. These letters have inconsistencies in the letterhead, incorrect contact information, and don't match the format of genuine HOA correspondence. I believe someone has been sending me fraudulent violation notices in an attempt to damage my property value and force me to sell my home. The room went silent. Patricia stood up abruptly. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Chen. Do you have any proof of this conspiracy theory? I've reported the matter to the United States Postal Inspection Service. Inspector Lisa Morales has opened an investigation into mail fraud. I've also discovered that 3 fraudulent liens have been filed against my property with the county, totaling $18,000 in fines I don't actually owe. The Clark County District Attorney's Office has been notified. Patricia's face went from red to white. Dennis stood up and looked at Patricia directly. Is this true? Have you been filing liens without board approval? I don't have to answer to you right now. This meeting is about Mr. Chen's violations, not about internal board procedures. Susan pulled out her laptop and started typing. Patricia, I'm looking at the county records right now. There are 3 liens filed against Mr. Chen's property, but I never approved any of these. Did the board vote on these? The other board members were all shaking their heads. Patricia grabbed her papers and started shoving them into her bag. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of crimes because Mr. Chen doesn't want to follow community guidelines." "Mrs. Hendricks, please sit down," Dennis said firmly. "We need to get to the bottom of this. If liens were filed without board approval, that's a serious problem." Patricia headed for the door. "I'm leaving. You people are impossible to work with." As she reached the exit, two people entered the room. One was Inspector Morales, now wearing a jacket clearly marked U.S. Postal Inspector. The other was a man in a suit carrying a badge. "Patricia Hendricks," Inspector Morales asked. Patricia froze. "Yes." "I'm Inspector Lisa Morales with the United States Postal Inspection Service. And this is Detective James Wilson with the Clark County District Attorney's Office. We need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding fraudulent documents sent through the U.S. mail and false lien filings with Clark County." The room erupted in confused chatter. Patricia looked around wildly as if searching for an escape route. "I want my lawyer." "That's your right, ma'am. You can call your lawyer from our office. Right now, we need you to come with us." Patricia was escorted out of the community center. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence until Dennis finally spoke. "Meeting adjourned. We need to figure out what the hell just happened." Over the next several weeks, the investigation unfolded like a nightmare for Patricia and a vindication for me. Inspector Morales called me regularly with updates, as much as she was allowed to share. The postal inspection had revealed that Patricia had been creating fake HOA violation letters on her home computer and mailing them to me directly. She had purchased HOA letterhead templates online and modified them to look official. The small inconsistencies I had noticed were the result of her using slightly different templates each time and not being quite careful enough with matching fonts and formatting. The investigation also uncovered her motive. Patricia had indeed wanted my property for her candle business. She had a buyer lined up for her current house and had been planning to make a lowball offer on my property once the fake violations and liens had sufficiently damaged my property value and made me desperate to sell. She had even contacted a real estate investor she knew, who was going to make the initial offer and then flip the property to her at cost. The fraudulent liens were filed using forged signatures of the management company's authorized representatives. Patricia had obtained samples of their signatures from publicly available HOA documents and practiced copying them until she could produce convincing forgeries. She had filed the liens herself at the county recorder's office, paying the filing fees with a personal check. Detective Wilson's investigation revealed that Patricia had done this before. In her previous neighborhood, before she moved to Sunrise Valley, she had been accused of similar behavior, but the homeowner had ultimately backed down and sold their house rather than fight. That homeowner, when contacted by investigators, confirmed that they had received mysterious violation letters and experienced property value problems before selling at a loss. However, they hadn't pursued legal action at the time. The charges against Patricia were extensive. The federal charge of mail fraud carried a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison and significant fines. The state charges included forgery, filing false documents, fraudulent encumbrance of property, and attempted theft by deception. The district attorney's office was taking it very seriously because fraud against homeowners was a growing problem in Nevada, and they wanted to send a clear message. Patricia's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, arguing that she hadn't actually succeeded in stealing anything and that this was a first offense. The prosecutors pointed out the previous incident in her old neighborhood and argued that Patricia was a repeat offender who had simply not been caught before. I received a call from the Clark County District Attorney's office asking if I would be willing to testify. I agreed immediately. The assistant district attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Torres, walked me through what to expect. "Mr. Chen, this case is very strong. We have documentary evidence, forensic analysis of the fake letters, handwriting analysis of the forged signatures, and Mrs. Hendricks' own computer, which still contained the templates she used to create the violation notices. Her lawyer knows she's in serious trouble. There's talk of a plea agreement, but even with a plea, she's looking at significant prison time and restitution. Will I get the liens removed from my property? Absolutely. We're already working with the county recorder's office to clear those. You'll also be able to sue Mrs. Hendricks in civil court for damages, including any property value loss, legal fees, and emotional distress. Given the criminal conviction, the civil case will be straightforward." The case moved through the system faster than I expected. Patricia's lawyer convinced her to take a plea deal rather than go to trial. She pleaded guilty to mail fraud, forgery, and filing false documents. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for late July. In the meantime, the Sunrise Valley HOA board held an emergency meeting to address the situation. Dennis had taken over as interim president, and one of his first acts was to send a formal letter of apology to me on behalf of the community. The letter acknowledged that Patricia had acted without board knowledge or approval, confirmed that I had no legitimate violations or liens, and offered to cover any legal expenses I had incurred. The management company also reached out to apologize. Jennifer, the board-sounding woman I had spoken to initially, admitted that Patricia had been calling her regularly to add fake violations to my file, but the management company had refused because they required photographic evidence and board approval for any enforcement actions. Patricia had been going around them entirely by mailing letters directly and filing liens on her own. My neighbors started approaching me in the grocery store and at the community mailboxes. Most were apologetic and embarrassed that they hadn't noticed what was happening. A few admitted they had thought the HOA was being ridiculous, but assumed the violations were real. One neighbor, an older man named Richard, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Marcus, I'm glad you fought this. Patricia tried similar nonsense with me last year, claiming my desert landscaping violated some rule about rock color. I replaced 50 yards of rock before I realized the rule she cited didn't actually exist. Cost me $3,000. I should have pushed back like you did." The sentencing hearing arrived on a blazing hot day in late July. The courthouse in downtown Las Vegas was busy with various cases, but ours was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. I sat in the gallery with Tom Rodriguez, who had insisted on coming for moral support. Patricia arrived with her lawyer, looking dramatically different from the confident, aggressive woman who had run the HOA. She wore a conservative gray suit, minimal makeup, and her hair was styled plainly. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 4 months. Judge Margaret Feldman presided over the hearing. She was known as a no-nonsense jurist who had little patience for white-collar criminals, who thought they were clever. Rebecca Torres presented the prosecution's sentencing recommendation: 60 months in federal prison for the mail fraud charge, to be served concurrently with a 36-month state sentence for the forgery and false filing charges, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Additionally, the prosecution recommended full restitution to me for all damages, including legal fees, the property survey, title search costs, and estimated property value loss. Patricia's lawyer argued for leniency, pointing out that Patricia was a first-time offender with no prior criminal record, that she had shown remorse, and that she had family obligations. Patricia's daughter, a college student, was in the courtroom crying. Her husband sat stone-faced, staring straight ahead. Judge Feldman listened to both sides, reviewed the pre-sentencing report, and then addressed Patricia directly. "Mrs. Hendricks, please stand. I've read everything submitted in your case, and I've considered the arguments from both sides. What you did was not a momentary lapse in judgment or a mistake. You conducted a sustained, deliberate campaign of fraud and forgery against an innocent person for your own financial benefit. You used your position of trust as an HOA president to lend credibility to your lies. You filed false legal documents with the county, wasted law enforcement resources, and caused significant emotional and financial harm to Mr. Chen." Patricia was crying now, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "The fact that you attempted this scheme in a previous neighborhood and got away with it makes this even more serious. You didn't learn from that incident. You learned that you could profit from victimizing homeowners. The court finds that a significant sentence is necessary to reflect the seriousness of this offense and to deter others who might think they can commit fraud without consequences." Judge Feldman sentenced Patricia to 48 months in federal prison on the mail fraud charge, with the state charges running concurrently. She also ordered Patricia to pay $62,000 in restitution to me, covering my legal fees, documentation costs, lost work time, and estimated property value impact. Patricia would begin serving her sentence in 30 days, and her supervised release would last 3 years after her prison term ended. As the bailiff led Patricia away, she looked back at her crying daughter and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Her husband got up and left the courtroom without speaking to anyone. Rebecca Torres shook my hand after the hearing. "Mr. Chen, justice was served today. Mrs. Hendricks will have plenty of time to think about what she did. You'll receive the restitution order in writing within a week. Her assets are being liquidated to pay you, so you should see payment within 60 to 90 days. Tom and I walked out of the courthouse into the scorching Vegas heat. "Marcus, I've been selling real estate for 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. You did the right thing fighting back. Most people would have given up or paid the fake fines just to make the problem go away. I almost did give up, Tom. If you hadn't told me about the postal inspector, I probably would have just paid something to make it stop. That's what people like Patricia count on. They prey on the fact that fighting back is exhausting and expensive, but you stood your ground, and now she's the one paying the price." The aftermath of the case was surprisingly positive for me. The local news picked up the story, and I did a couple of interviews about HOA fraud and how homeowners can protect themselves. A consumer protection organization asked me to speak at one of their events. I became something of an accidental advocate for HOA transparency and accountability. The Sunrise Valley HOA underwent significant changes. Dennis and Susan led an effort to completely overhaul the HOA's governance procedures. They implemented new rules requiring all violation notices to be approved by at least 3 board members, with photographic evidence and proper documentation. They hired a new management company with better oversight procedures. They also passed a rule that all liens required unanimous board approval and had to be verified by an independent attorney. The fake liens were removed from my property record within 3 weeks of Patricia's sentencing. I ordered a new title search to confirm everything was clean, and it came back perfect. My property value, which had taken a hit during the investigation when potential buyers saw the liens and violations, recovered quickly once the news stories explained what had happened, and that I had been the victim of fraud. Patricia's restitution payment arrived in September, exactly $62,000 as ordered by the court. The check came from the liquidation of her assets, including her house, which had been sold to cover her legal debts and the restitution order. I deposited the money and immediately paid off a chunk of my mortgage. I received a letter from Patricia about 6 weeks after she began serving her sentence. It was forwarded through her attorney, and I debated whether to even open it. Eventually, curiosity won out. The letter was handwritten on plain paper. Patricia apologized for what she had done, explained that she had been under financial pressure and made terrible decisions, and asked for my forgiveness. She wrote that she thought about her choices every day and regretted the harm she had caused me and her own family. She didn't ask for anything, just wanted me to know she was sorry. I read the letter twice and then filed it away. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to forgive her, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. She had tried to destroy my financial security for her own benefit. The fact that she felt bad about it now didn't change what she had done. Life in Sunrise Valley slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board was professional and reasonable. When I accidentally left my trash cans out a few hours late one week, I got a friendly knock on my door from Dennis, who let me know and helped me wheel them back to my garage. That's what a real HOA should be, I thought. Neighbors helping neighbors, not dictators looking for violations. I kept working from home, maintained my property carefully, and actually started attending HOA meetings regularly. I figured if I had fought this hard to keep my house, I should be involved in making sure the community stayed healthy and functional. Other homeowners who attended the meetings had heard about what happened, and several of them thanked me for standing up to Patricia. Tom called me one day in October. "Marcus, I've got some interesting news. Your property value just got reassessed by the county, and it's up 18% from when you bought it. The market is strong in Henderson right now, and your place is looking great. If you're still thinking about selling in a couple years, you're going to do very well." I smiled. "Thanks, Tom." "Yeah, I'm still planning to sell eventually, but I'm in no rush. I'm actually enjoying living here now that the HOA drama is over." "Well, let me know when you're ready." "And Marcus, thank you for letting me be part of this journey. It was insane, but I learned a lot about how to protect my clients from HOA fraud. I'm actually putting together a presentation for other realtors about warning signs and red flags." The holidays came and went. I decorated my house for Christmas, putting up lights that were carefully within the HOA's guidelines, not because I was afraid of violations, but because I wanted to be a good neighbor. Kids from the community would walk by with their parents to look at the decorations, and I'd wave from my porch. In January, I got an email from Rebecca Torres at the district attorney's office. She was following up to see how I was doing and whether I had received the full restitution payment. I confirmed that everything had been taken care of. She mentioned that Patricia's case had become a reference point for prosecuting HOA-related fraud in Nevada, and that several other investigations had been opened in different communities based on similar complaints. "Mr. Chen, your willingness to fight back and cooperate with the investigation made a real difference. A lot of victims of this kind of fraud feel powerless or embarrassed, and they don't report it. Because you did, we were able to stop someone who probably would have kept victimizing homeowners for years." I thanked her for her work on the case. After we hung up, I thought about how random it all was. If Tom hadn't mentioned the postal inspector, if I hadn't documented everything so carefully, if Inspector Morales hadn't taken my complaint seriously, Patricia would probably have succeeded. I would have either paid thousands in fake fines or sold my house at a loss, and she would have gotten exactly what she wanted. Instead, she was in federal prison. My house was worth more than ever, and I had learned a valuable lesson about standing up for yourself even when the system seems designed to wear you down. The spring came again, marking a full year since the fake violation letters had started appearing in my mailbox. I was working in my home office one morning when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman in her 20s standing on my porch, looking nervous. "Mr. Chen, I'm Ashley Hendricks, Patricia's daughter." I recognized her from the sentencing hearing. "Hi, Ashley. What can I do for you? I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to talk to you for a minute if that's okay." I invited her in, and we sat in my living room. She looked around, taking in the house that her mother had tried to steal from me. "I wanted to apologize in person for what my mom did," Ashley said. "I know she sent you a letter, but I needed to say something too. I had no idea what she was doing until everything came out. I feel horrible about it." "Ashley, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not responsible for your mother's choices." "I know, but it's affected my whole family. My parents got divorced because of this. My dad said he couldn't stay married to someone who would do something so dishonest. I had to drop out of school for a semester because we couldn't afford tuition after paying for lawyers and restitution. My mom destroyed everything. I felt sorry for her. She was a victim of Patricia's choices too. I'm sorry you're going through this. It's not fair to you. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in my family is like her. I work 2 jobs now to pay for school, and I'm going to graduate next year. I'm studying business ethics, actually. Kind of ironic, I guess." We talked for a while longer. Ashley was bright and articulate, nothing like her mother's entitled and aggressive personality. She told me about her plans to work in corporate compliance after graduation, helping companies avoid fraud and ethical violations. The whole situation with her mother had given her a strong sense of what not to do. After Ashley left, I thought about the ripple effects of Patricia's crimes. Her daughter's education disrupted, her marriage destroyed, her reputation in ruins, and 4 years of her life spent in prison. All because she wanted my house and thought she could cheat her way into getting it. I went back to my office and looked out the window at my backyard, the one that opened onto the common area with the playground. A couple of kids were playing on the swings while their mothers chatted on a nearby bench. It was a beautiful spring day in Henderson, Nevada. The desert sky was brilliant blue, the temperature was perfect, and my house was exactly where it should be. Mine. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for the following week, and I had volunteered to join the architectural committee. Dennis thought my experience with documentation and attention to detail would be valuable for reviewing homeowner requests for modifications. I was actually looking forward to it. Being part of the solution, instead of fighting against corruption, felt good. I also decided to write a detailed account of everything that had happened, from the first fake violation letter to Patricia's sentencing. I published it on a homeowner advocacy website, changing some identifying details, but keeping the core story intact. Within days, the post had thousands of views and dozens of comments from people who had experienced similar HOA problems. Several people asked for advice on how to fight back against their own HOA issues. I became a resource for homeowners dealing with aggressive or fraudulent HOAs. I wasn't a lawyer, and I always told people to get proper legal advice, but I could share what had worked for me: documentation, persistence, and knowing when to involve law enforcement. The postal inspector angle was particularly useful, as most people had no idea that mail fraud was a federal crime that would be taken seriously. Tom sent me referrals for homeowners who were considering selling because of HOA problems. I would meet with them, review their situations, and help them determine whether they had legitimate violations or were being targeted like I had been. In 2 cases, I was able to help homeowners identify fraudulent violation notices, and they reported them to authorities. One case resulted in the HOA president being removed from the board, though not criminally charged. As the months passed, I found myself genuinely invested in making Sunrise Valley a better community. The HOA board, under Dennis and Susan's leadership, was functioning well. We had reasonable rules that were fairly enforced. Homeowners knew they could appeal decisions and would be heard. The culture had completely changed from Patricia's reign of terror. I even started organizing community events. We had a neighborhood barbecue in June that drew almost 50 families. Kids played in the common area while adults grilled burgers and got to know each other. It was the kind of community gathering that should have been happening all along. But Patricia had been too focused on rules and violations to bother with actually building community. In August, almost 18 months after the fake violation letters had started, I got a call from Inspector Morales. We had stayed in touch occasionally, and she had kept me updated on Patricia's appeals, which had all been denied. "Marcus, I wanted to let you know that your case has become a training example for new postal inspectors. We use it to teach them about HOA fraud and how to work with local authorities on these kinds of investigations. You might be interested to know that mail fraud complaints related to HOAs have increased significantly over the past year. People are more aware now that they can report this kind of thing." "That's good news, Lisa. I hope it means fewer people are getting victimized." "It does. We've opened at least a dozen investigations based on complaints similar to yours. Not all of them will result in criminal charges, but we're finding that just having postal inspectors asking questions often makes the harassment stop. HOA board members who are abusing their power tend to back off quickly when they realize federal agents are involved." We talked for a while about other cases she was working on, always keeping the details vague to protect privacy. It was clear that HOA fraud was a bigger problem than most people realized, but it was also clear that law enforcement was starting to take it seriously. My house continued to appreciate in value. By the fall, Tom estimated it was worth nearly 25% more than I had paid for it. The Henderson market was strong, and my property's location and condition made it particularly desirable. I thought about selling, but I wasn't quite ready yet. I had put so much energy into fighting for this house that I wanted to enjoy living in it for a while longer. I also started dating someone I met through the community events. Her name was Sarah, and she lived 3 streets over with her rescue dog. She had moved to Sunrise Valley after Patricia was gone, so she had never experienced the toxic HOA environment. When I told her the story of what had happened, she was shocked. "I can't believe someone would go to all that trouble just to steal your house," she said over dinner one night. "That's actually insane." It is insane, but people do crazy things when they want something badly enough. Patricia convinced herself she deserved this property for her business, and she didn't care who she hurt to get it. "I'm glad you fought back. A lot of people would have just given up." We were sitting on my back patio, the one that overlooked the common area. The sun was setting over the desert mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was peaceful and beautiful, everything I had hoped for when I bought this house. As the second anniversary of the fake violation letters approached, I reflected on everything that had changed. Patricia was still in federal prison, serving her sentence. According to the Bureau of Prisons website, her release date was scheduled for about 30 months from now, and then she would have 3 years of supervised release. She would be nearly 53 years old when she was finally free, with a federal conviction on her record and probably no realistic chance of ever being an HOA president again. My life, on the other hand, had improved in almost every way. My house was worth significantly more than I paid for it. I had become an active and respected member of my community. I had helped other homeowners stand up to HOA fraud. I was in a happy relationship. And I had learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult and scary, can lead to outcomes better than you ever imagined. The Sunrise Valley HOA thrived under its new leadership. Dennis served out his term as president and was replaced by Susan, who continued the policies of transparency and fairness. The architectural committee, which I was now a part of, reviewed homeowner requests promptly and reasonably. We approved modifications that made sense and only denied requests that genuinely violated community standards or local codes. We treated homeowners like partners, not adversaries. One evening in late October, almost 2 years after everything started, I was checking my mail when I found an envelope from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. My stomach tightened. I opened it carefully. It was a victim notification letter informing me that Patricia Hendricks had been transferred to a different facility and that her custody status remained unchanged. She was still incarcerated, still serving her sentence. The letter was purely informational, but it reminded me that the consequences of her actions were ongoing. I filed the letter away with all the other documents from the case. I had a thick folder now. Fake violation letters, legal correspondence, court documents, the restitution order, and miscellaneous paperwork related to clearing my property title. It was a complete record of one of the strangest and most stressful periods of my life. But it was over now. Patricia was in prison, my house was secure, and my property value had recovered and then some. The HOA was functional and fair. My community was thriving. Justice had been served, not just in the criminal sense, but in the broader sense of things being set right. I walked back into my house, Sarah's dog greeting me at the door with enthusiastic tail wags. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner, and the smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. I put my mail on the counter and smiled. This was my home, the one I had fought for and won. No one was going to take it from me with fake letters and fraudulent liens. Not Patricia, not anyone. The lesson I learned from the whole experience was simple but profound. Documentation matters, persistence pays off, and sometimes the system actually works if you know how to navigate it. The postal inspector, the district attorney, the judge, and everyone else involved in bringing Patricia to justice had done their jobs. But none of it would have happened if I hadn't taken that first step of calling the post office and reporting possible mail fraud. That's what I told people when they asked for advice about their own HOA problems. Document everything. Keep every piece of paper. Take photos and videos with timestamps. And don't be afraid to involve law enforcement when someone crosses the line from being annoying to committing actual crimes. Mail fraud is a federal crime. Forgery is a crime. Filing false legal documents is a crime. HOA board members aren't above the law, and when they act like they are, there are consequences. I never heard from Patricia again after that one letter from prison. I didn't expect to. What would she say? She had apologized, I had moved on, and that was the end of it. Her daughter, Ashley, occasionally sent me updates about how her family was doing, which I appreciated. She graduated from college with honors, got a job at a corporate compliance firm in Phoenix, and was doing well. Her father had remarried and was rebuilding his life. They visited Patricia in prison occasionally, but the relationships were strained. The holidays arrived again, my third Christmas in this house. I went all out with the decorations, putting up a massive light display that was featured on a local news segment about festive neighborhoods. Families drove through Sunrise Valley to see the lights, and kids pressed their faces against car windows pointing at the synchronized music and light show I had programmed. Sarah and I hosted a holiday party, inviting neighbors and friends. My house was full of laughter and conversation, people spilling out onto the back patio despite the December chill. Dennis gave a toast thanking me for my service on the HOA board and for bringing the community together after a difficult period. People clapped, and I felt genuinely grateful to be exactly where I was. As the party wound down and guests departed, I stood in my living room looking at the Christmas tree. 3 years ago, when I bought this house, I never could have imagined the journey I would go through. I thought I was just buying a solid investment property in a nice neighborhood. Instead, I ended up fighting a federal case against a fraudulent HOA president, learning about mail fraud and postal inspectors, testifying in court, and ultimately helping change how HOA fraud is prosecuted in Nevada. It had been exhausting and stressful, but I wouldn't trade the outcome for anything. I had stood up for myself, refused to be a victim, and won. Patricia Hendricks had tried to destroy my financial security for her own benefit, and instead, she destroyed her own life. That wasn't my fault or my responsibility. She made her choices, and she was living with the consequences. I made my choices too. I chose to fight back, to document everything, to involve law enforcement, and to see the case through to the end. Those choices had cost me time and energy, but they had also taught me that I was stronger and more capable than I had realized. When someone came after me with lies and fraud, I didn't crumble. I fought back intelligently and strategically, and I won. The new year arrived with its usual flurry of resolutions and fresh starts. I decided that this would be the year I started thinking seriously about my next move. The house had been an excellent investment, and it had appreciated beyond my expectations. Tom was right that the Henderson market was strong and my property was particularly desirable. Maybe it was time to sell and move on to the next opportunity, but there was no rush. For now, I was content right where I was, in the house I had fought for, in the community I had helped improve, with the peace of mind that comes from knowing justice had been served. Patricia Hendricks had learned an expensive lesson about the consequences of fraud, and I had learned an empowering lesson about the importance of standing up for yourself. Every time I checked my mailbox now, I felt a little surge of satisfaction. No more fake violation letters, no more threats of fictional fines, no more fraudulent liens. Just regular mail, bills and advertisements, and the occasional HOA newsletter with legitimate community updates. It was boring and normal and absolutely perfect. The fake violation letters that had started this whole saga were still in my file, preserved as evidence and as a reminder. Sometimes I would pull them out and look at them, marveling at how something so seemingly small, a fake letter in my mailbox, had spiraled into a federal case. But that's how fraud works. It starts small with little lies and minor deceptions, and it grows until someone stops it. I was glad I had been the one to stop it. Not just for myself, but for all the other potential victims who would have come after me if Patricia had succeeded. She would have refined her technique, gotten better at the forgery, more careful about the details. She might have targeted dozens of homeowners over the years, stealing property values and destroying financial security. Instead, she was in federal prison, and other HOA board members across the state were learning that this kind of fraud came with serious consequences. In March, exactly 3 years after I received that first fake violation letter about the non-existent fence, I invited Tom Rodriguez over for dinner. We sat on my back patio, grilling steaks and drinking beer, watching the sunset over the desert. "Marcus, this place looks great. You've really made it a home." "Thanks, Tom. I have you to thank for a lot of it. If you hadn't told me about the postal inspector, I might still be fighting fake violations. You would have figured it out eventually. You're thorough and you don't give up. Those are good qualities in a homeowner and in a person." We talked about the real estate market, about other properties he was selling, about the changes in Henderson over the past few years. Eventually, I brought up what I had been thinking about. "Tom, I'm considering putting the house on the market this summer. I think I'm ready for a change and the timing is right financially." Tom nodded. "I figured you'd be thinking about that. You've more than doubled your equity, the neighborhood is desirable, and you've got no clouds on the title. It's a perfect time to sell. Where are you thinking about moving?" "Maybe downtown Las Vegas. I like the energy there, and I'm ready for something different than suburban HOA life, even though this HOA is fine now. Can't say I blame you after everything you went through, though you turned it around impressively. This community is better because of what you did. We set a tentative plan to list the house in June. Tom would handle the marketing and sales process, and I would start preparing the property to show. It felt right. I had bought this house as an investment, fought for it when someone tried to steal it, and now I was going to sell it on my own terms at a significant profit. That was exactly how it was supposed to work. The listing went live in early June, and we had multiple offers within a week. The house showed beautifully. My improvements and maintenance had paid off, and buyers loved the location. We accepted an offer that was $15,000 over asking price, with no contingencies and a quick close. 60 days later, I signed the final paperwork and handed over the keys. The new owners were a young couple with a baby, excited to be moving into their first house. They had no idea about the drama that had unfolded here, and I didn't tell them. It wasn't relevant anymore. The HOA was solid, the community was great, and they would have a wonderful experience living in Sunrise Valley. I moved into a loft in downtown Las Vegas, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows and no HOA. I could paint my door whatever color I wanted, install any kind of fence I wanted, though I didn't have a yard anymore and never worry about violation letters again. It was liberating. Looking back on the entire experience, from that first fake violation letter to Patricia's arrest and conviction to finally selling the house for a substantial profit, I felt a sense of completion. I had been tested in a way I never expected, and I had passed the test. I had learned about mail fraud and postal inspectors, about fraudulent liens and property law, about standing up to bullies with authority, and about the importance of documentation and persistence. Most importantly, I had learned that justice isn't automatic. It requires effort and courage. If I had given up, if I had paid the fake fines or sold the house at a loss, Patricia would have won. But I didn't give up, and she didn't win. She was still in federal prison, serving the consequences of her crimes, and I was living in a beautiful downtown loft with a significant profit from the house sale safely in my investment accounts. The postal inspector had gotten involved, just like the story promised. Patricia had mailed fake violation letters to tank my property value, just like she planned. But her plan had failed spectacularly, and mine had succeeded. That made all the stress and fighting worthwhile. Sometimes standing up for yourself changes everything, and this was one of those times. The fake violation letters were supposed to destroy me financially, but instead they led to Patricia's downfall and my ultimate victory. That's the way justice is supposed to work, and for once, it actually did.